Welcome back, everyone, to the Even Your Dynasty show. We got Dan and Ricky joining us, and we got another live show going today. I can talk a little bit more Giants offseason. Fortunately, we've had, I think, pretty much no action happen in baseball since the last live show, other than what Hyesung Kim signed today.
That's your superstar news, bro.
Yeah, the floodgates are going to open.
Imagine.
We got a guy signing a $12 million contract. That's all we needed, everyone.
It's crazy. Man. I didn't expect him to go for that cheap. I thought he would have got a little bit more interest, but man, he really let it come down to the wire there. And of course, of all teams, the Dodgers have to step in because why not?
Of course.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think it made sense for them, just the way their roster's constructed. I am shocked it was as cheap as it was, but also on the flip side, like you look at what he is as a prospect, and honestly, you look at a lot of the contracts that guys signed coming from the KBO in the last, 5 or so years, 10 years, and a lot of them only really get like $4 or $5 million. Jung-Hoo Lee was really an anomaly from that. Just like what's the guy's name? Last name's Kim, the 21-year-old that looks like the insanely good prospect. Like he's probably going to sign a big deal too, like Lee did. But yeah, most of these guys only get like 4 or 5 million. I think Hyesung Kim only got 4 for 28.
Yeah, he's on a pretty cheap deal too. And I mean, he actually showed some power before he came to the States. This Kim that signed today with the Dodgers, I think with him, it was just, there's not really much power to profile there, and it's just a lot of speed and contact. And I just thought some smaller market team, it would be wise for them to take a flyer on a guy like him, just because of the athleticism, the ability to, play both middle infield spots, obviously more of a second baseman. But, I thought I would see somebody else step in, not the Dodgers, who already have like 5 second basemen.
Well, apparently he turned down more money to go to LA. So
makes sense for him if he wants a bigger payday later on,
But, yeah. Rob says, how do the Dodgers find places to park all their players?
I don't know.
Have you looked around the latrine? It's like just all parking. That's all there is there. So I don't know. But yeah, they it makes sense for them. Like I said, he's a good fit in the back of the lineup. He's gonna play good defense at second base, and he, if he hits, that's just an added bonus for them. He's got a lot of speed, so if he can get on base, he's gonna be kind of a pest. But he wasn't really a fit for the Giants. I like the potential there. I mean, like Ricky said, there's not a ton of power, but if he can hit major league pitching, like he's shown, like he can kind of rake, but in the KBO, but it's a huge jump to the majors. So yeah, makes sense for them. Not really a fit for the Giants. Tom, I believe Cartaya, their former top prospect, he is the one who got DFA'd today. Would make sense for the Giants to try and grab him, but I don't know if they will.
It makes sense purely for the fact that we have no catching depth in the minors.
Yeah,
I would take a flyer. I texted you guys that earlier. I would take a flyer on him just because he's only 23, and he's been kind of trash, but still the potential's there, and we have nobody else in the farm system, so might as well.
Yeah. Speaking of guys with go ahead, Ricky.
Oh, no, I was going to say the thing with Cartaya is he started out real hot as a really young prospect. And the thing is oftentimes we see these really young international catchers. They start out really good in, low A or high A, and then they immediately just boost way up in the MLB top 100. And that's what Cartaya did. We talked about it earlier, but he was ranked 14th overall in baseball as a prospect as early as beginning of last season. And he just completely fell off once he hit the upper minors. But I mean, ultimately, taking a flyer on a guy like him could really make up for just giving Joey Bart away for nothing, and give you a little bit of depth and, learn from your mistake of, deciding to go with the old veteran backup catcher, Tom Murphy, who's always hurt. and bring in a guy like Cartaya, who's only, that's true. No arm, always hurt. You bring in a guy like Cartaya with a lot more upside, and he does have power. He does hit for low average, but he does have power. So he's kind of like what you were looking at with Joey Bart, except for he's a little bit younger. So there is a ceiling there, and the Giants are definitely the type of team based on what they have in the minors that should definitely take a flyer and just see what you got.
No, Jackson Reitz is irreplaceable. I'm sorry.
Who did they replace him with? What was that guy's name that they just signed a month and a half ago?
It's like Max Stassi.
Thank you, Stassi. I was drawing a blank.
They also re-signed that one switch hitter that they had in SAC last year. He was from the Royal system. Yeah. He's like in his late 20s, and he's done nothing but stay in AAA for like 3 years.
Hey, good for him.
And he was a total Farhan guy, high on base percentage, very little power, a little bit of athleticism.
Papirski.
Don't bring up Papirski, man.
Yeah. How can we forget? Chadwick Tromp also. Austin Wins. This is just legends, man.
Stop it.
Oh, God. But Cartaya, honestly, and we're going to get into the minor league talk a little bit. We're going to, because, we are going to talk about the Giants system as a whole. I know we've done it in the past, but, Bleacher Report came out, ranked him dead last. I think they came out with another rankings. They were dead last again. And then it kind of ties into the Baggerly article that got written that we're going to talk about later, where the Giants were really involved in trying to trade for Kyle Tucker and Garrett Crochet. And they, both teams wanted Bryce Eldridge, and the Giants said no. But they still supposedly put out offers for both players that, quote, made them uncomfortable, which to me kind of leads me to believe that basically everybody else was on the table other than Eldridge. And they put out because they do have some talent with guys that are at the major league level already that was pretty substantial. And, I've always said if it doesn't hurt, you probably didn't give up enough when you're getting high-end players back. So, we're going to talk a little bit about the Giants system when we get in on that, but it was kind of an interesting nugget in there that, they're actively pursuing trades. So it's kind of good to hear.
I mean, that's Maniason's like specialty when he was with Milwaukee. So.
Yeah, for sure. I think we touched on that a lot when he got hired. We kind of expect them to be much more aggressive, and I still do expect it in the grand scheme of like this regime, but it just might not be this season because of what they were handed, when they took over. They didn't exactly inherit a ton of tradable assets that teams covet. So we'll definitely talk a little bit about that. And if their system really is that bad, and if it's going to be a long-term thing to fix the system, or if it is something that, could potentially be pretty quick, that they kind of climb up the rankings pretty fast. So we'll dive in on that. But first, we'll talk a little bit about free agency that's going on right now. Mark Feinzan reported that the Giants are still pretty involved in 3 different people. We've heard nothing as far as guys like Anthony Santander. I think I haven't heard anything about Bregman other than kind of in passing, where they've kind of mentioned like they're kind of looking at it, but it hasn't sounded like they're super interested there. But they are reported to be really in on 3 different people, and that would be Jack Flaherty, Pete Alonso, and Roki Sasaki. And as you can tell by Dan's reaction to Flaherty, and for anyone that's listened to us, we pretty much could go without that one. But they are still interested in there on that front. Makes sense. They've missed out on pretty much all the starting pitching on the market. And you look at the starting pitching market as far as free agency goes, and you're kind of down to, Flaherty, Sasaki, and a whole bunch of 43-year-olds. So
yeah, I don't see them being seriously in on Flaherty unless they missed out on Sasaki. I think that would be the pivot from, the Giants' perspective. And according to another article that dropped, the 3 top teams for Sasaki are Dodgers, Padres, and us. So I'm ready to get hurt again, guys.
Hey,
I'm not.
Can't. I need to find the thing actually while you guys are doing this.
No, but I mean, I would love to land Sasaki. We're gonna dive more into that. I would love to. That would be a dream come true. The 2 teams that we've kind of assumed would be the most likely destinations are the 2 other teams that we're competing against for him. So I don't know how that's gonna go. And we've talked about Alonso as well. I love the power potential. It's just I don't see the fit based on where the team's at currently. His current age, with Eldridge coming in. I like the idea of it. I don't know if it makes much realistic sense. So I don't know. I don't know what we're doing or gonna do at this point. We've all talked about it, guys. Santander made the most sense, from a position player standpoint and from his, hitting profile. But I don't know. That's just the best thing I could say. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, where I stand with the other. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Who's ready, everybody?
Yeah.
Oh man,
that's how it'll go.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much where I stand on the free agents not named Sasaki, because I mean, Sasaki's just such a wild card given the contract status with him and money not really being, how you're going to acquire him. It's really just purely up to him and where he thinks he's going to get the best deal as far as endorsements and stuff goes. But for me, I really can't get behind, a potential Jack Flaherty deal unless he's coming on a 1 or 2 year deal and the money is very reasonable. To me, when you're trying to stay under, spending another, say, $35 million for this year, I just don't understand and can't really get behind getting Jack Flaherty at, say, 20 mil a year AAV and then saying, nah, I'm good off Anthony Santander. I just don't understand that when rumors are that the highest offer as of right now is, I think it was the Blue Jays for Santander at, 4 years, 80 million, which is exactly damn near what I came on here last Friday and said was 20 mil a year for 4 years. I just don't understand how you couldn't do that for a legit power hitter that could hit 4 or 5 in your lineup every single day. And then you're like, no, I'm good. I'm going to get Jack Flaherty, who at his absolute best threw 160 innings last year. I can't get behind that. I just think Santander makes a ton of sense. If you have any hopes of winning now, like throwing him and Adames on top of whatever you had last year, with Ramos and Chapman and Fitz and some of the guys that stood out last year, you all of a sudden have a formidable lineup where I don't really see Jack Flaherty raising the ceiling too much on the 2025 Giants.
Yeah, and the thing with Flaherty to me is the two aspects of him that turns me off from the idea of him is the health. Firstly, health has been an issue, and secondly, which was kind of touched on by Rob in the comments, there's just such a bad rap around like his personality in the clubhouse in general. It just, I don't know if it makes good sense, at least, culture wise for the Giants. So, I mean, the idea makes a lot of sense because like you touched on, Cody, options are very limited and starting pitching at least is obviously a huge need given, how this offseason has gone so far. So that's why, to me, it seems like if they miss out on Sasaki, Flaherty will probably be the guy they target.
Like you guys said, if you can get Flaherty on like a 1 year deal or, 1 year with an option, I don't know, something like that, he makes sense because it limits the risk. If you get Flaherty at his best, he's a really good pitcher. Like you see what he did last season, you see what he did, and I think in, what was it, 2019? Yeah, you see what he did in 2019. I mean, he was dominant in 2019. He was really good in 2018. When he's healthy and he's at his best, he's clearly a really, really good pitcher. He'd be a good, solid number 2 in this rotation. But the problem is how often has he been at his best? I mean, it's like 3 years out of his, 8 that he's been in the majors that he's been really good. And the others, he's been either just injured or poor. And if you're going to have to get him on a 3-year deal, I can't get behind that. And that's just purely from a performance standpoint. Then you factor in the reputation as kind of an asshole. Like, I kind of struggle with, I mean, and Will Clark was like that. So it's like, it's okay with certain players, but
you better be good though.
Yeah, you better be good if you're going to be that kind of guy. Like, Will Clark was an MVP candidate. Jack Flaherty is not anything close to that. So I'm just not a fan of that in your clubhouse if you're going to get a guy that's just not going to, is not super reliable on being very productive. And I feel like if you get him for 3 years, you're almost guaranteed one of those is going to be a complete waste, because the way it's been, he's probably going to be at least hurt for one of those. And the other 2, you're kind of rolling the dice on how much production you're going to get out of them. So
yeah.
I really just, that's my main reason for being kind of off on that. I get why some people like it or like him as a player, just with the upside, because he has put it together a few times, but on the whole, I'm good. I would rather go with the young guys.
My bottom line with Flaherty, like you guys touched on, I'm okay with a short-term deal. I am way, way, way against a long-term deal. And that's just plain and simple for the reasons you guys described.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to touch on Heath's comment.
Yeah, I'll pull it up.
Yeah, so as far as Santander goes, I haven't seen that metric by Baseball Savant, but I have seen other spray charts where it shows all of his home runs that he had with Baltimore last year would have cleared at Oracle. And you do also have to factor in, he would get the benefit of, a handful of games at Coors Field, which would be really good for him. Obviously, Arizona is a great hitter's park. Petco, believe it or not, has actually become a pretty decent hitter's park, especially for lefties. They got that little short porch down the right field line. So, I mean, you're looking at a lot of places away from home that, he would do just fine in. You get another few games in Cincinnati and some of these other NL parks that are some of the best hitters parks in the league. And I don't think it would be a huge issue for him. He's definitely not a guy that's hitting a bunch of wall scrapers. He's definitely a guy that could easily have a handful of splash hits every year. He had some pretty impressive home runs last year for the Orioles.
Yeah. So this is what I think Heath is referring to. These are if they, this is expected home runs, and this would be if they played every single game in Oracle Park, and allegedly they're factoring in things, park factors, wind, weather, whatever, the impact you would have, and it goes down to 30 in San Francisco, which, if you guys give me a second to pull up his spray chart from that time frame, yes and no. Like Ricky said, only half the games are in Oracle. So that 30 is probably more, he hit 44 last year. That 30 probably would have been more like 36, or 37, which I don't think any of us are really that concerned about, a guy if he puts up 30 plus. My thing with Santander, though, is for anybody that's actually pulled up his highlights and things like that, he hits some absolute nukes that no park in America is holding. Like, he hit some balls just straight away right field, like not into right center. Like, he hit some balls into straightaway right where they'd have easily been well out into the cove. And a guy like him could really get the cove kind of hopping again a little bit, especially once Bryce comes up too. You might have, if you had like 2 lefties with a big time power that could put balls into the cove, like, I feel like it'd be kind of fun for the ballpark environment again. You'd get a bunch of kayaks back out there and, people, trying to catch a splash hit again, but they haven't really had that big time power. I mean, Belt had, he would put one, a couple in the cove. Crawford seemed to put one or two out there every year, and Pablo would put a couple, but they just haven't really had a lot of guys that would, put a bunch out there.
And one thing I do really want to emphasize with him too is, Santander is not going to get the same kind of contract that Alonso will most likely get unless he takes like a 1-year deal to re-enter free agency next year. Is Santander not only doesn't block Bryce if Bryce does do really well to start the season and comes up quickly, you don't have to worry about him blocking Bryce. It does fill a spot in your outfield. A contract that Santander is going to get isn't going to break the bank for you. It's a very reasonable deal, in my opinion, for a guy of his quality. And the most important thing is the Giants desperately need a left-handed hitter in the lineup, and that's the one thing that Santander is going to give you. He hits from both sides, but he's going to give you a lefty bat with power, and you're just not going to get that, obviously, from Bregman or Alonso. Obviously, they would be huge additions to the lineup one way or another, but it would be very helpful to get another lefty bat in the lineup because as of right now, you're looking at probably Yaz getting plugged in more often than not in the outfield if you don't go and get a Santander. And yes, Clayton, you would lose the 2 picks. He does have a qualifying offer attached to him.
Yeah.
As do a lot of these guys. So
Flaherty does not, just so you know.
Flaherty
Alonso
does.
Yes. And so does Santander.
So, and that's the thing is if you do go after Pete, is he going to want to just use the Giants on a 1-year prove it deal, or is he going to want to be here long term? That's the question. But I really do want to stress the importance of getting a lefty hitter in here because as of right now, you're looking at Jung-Hoo Lee, Santander if you get him, and Yaz. Bailey if you really want to count him, but he's going to be hitting at the bottom of the lineup, and he has a lot to prove as a hitter still. But other than that, you're looking at Adames, Chapman, Fitz, Matos. All these guys are going to hit from the right side. So that's just something we got to keep in mind when we're looking at these free agent hitters.
Hey, don't forget MVP Wade. Okay.
Yeah. All the pop.
All the
yeah.
pop.
Now, I will say this. I did watch I was pulling up the Santander highlights because I was curious. I'm like, I want to see where, you get the spray charts. It doesn't really tell the whole story. He does hit a lot of if you look at his swing path, he doesn't have that big uppercut that a lot of, big power hitters have. He kind of has a little bit more old school. Like you can tell he backspins some. So like when he gets it, it goes forever. Like he hits some of these balls that are like way out here. Like those would have left Oracle with ease, but he does hit a lot of low ones. So kind of to Tom's point here, maybe the homers go down, but he's going to hit a ton of doubles if he were in the park. I've always said I care more about extra base hit totals in Oracle than I do the home run totals. Chapman last year is kind of a prime example. He hit 27 home runs, but he had like 68 extra base hits or something like that at the end of the year. I don't know the exact number, but he had a ton of doubles, a ton of triples, and then he chipped in like 15 stolen bases, which was great. Santander won't steal any bags for you really, but he's hit over 30 doubles a year as well. I think last season,
2 years ago, 41.
2 years ago, he had 41 because he had 33 homers. And we'll just do this. This will be easier.
And the other thing too is like when you think about it, Baltimore's park has some similar dimensions to the Giants stadium. I mean, some of the Giants stadium was built very similar, especially the right field side where you see that he had a lot of his home runs. Obviously not all those were in Baltimore, but it goes to show that he can definitely hit him out of our park. Obviously the night games play a little bit different, but
look at some of these. Like these are balls that were caught in other stadiums that, these probably are off the wall. These might have left the yard in left field because people forget in Camden, especially for a right-handed hitter, Camden is pretty brutal. Like they backed that wall way up. So he could do just fine in this ballpark. Now, is he worth it for 5 years or anything like that? I think that is a fair question and a fair debate. The picks you're losing, that's obviously it's fair to me. If you're going to if you're going to go the improving your team via free agency, you just kind of do it with the understanding that you're going to overpay and you're going to pay guys too long. Is it ideal to be paying Chapman for 6 years or Adames for 7 years? No. At the end, we're going to probably be like, this kind of sucks. But you're trying to build something now, and then you worry about the back end when the back end comes. And hopefully you've built up your farm system and acquired other talent to offset some of what you're going to have to pay for guys that are declining. But to Ricky's point, he's a huge left, he switch hits, but he's huge from the left side. Like, he'd be a huge help to this lineup. So,
yeah.
Oh, well, but go ahead.
I just think that the other thing too that goes missing is everybody talks about how great Baltimore's lineup was, and they don't realize that guys like Gunnar Henderson was hitting at the top. You had Santander hitting 4th and 5th even in that lineup, and that was a very deep lineup and has been for, I'd say 2 to 3 years now. Honestly, probably the last 3 years. So, I mean, I really think he could be a huge help, and you're not really relying on his defense in left field. And our park, you can handle having a slower left fielder out there. So I don't think that contract would age nearly as bad as, say possibly Adames or Chapman does on the back end. You sign him 4 or 5 years, you're looking at a guy in his mid 30s, and you can see tons of guys around the league that are still showing off power at that age. You're not really worried about the power. It's usually the defense you're worried about falling off at that age.
See, I just find it surprising because, I mean, based on this conversation alone, we see the fit with San Francisco and Santander. It just amazes me how there's been no connection as far as like media and reports and whatnot between the two, and the speculation right now and, presumed rumors are with Alonso, which doesn't really have much of a fit. I don't know. It's just kind of surprising because we see the fit, but apparently there isn't one. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's well, we're gonna have a good idea probably pretty soon what kind of team Posey wants to build. So Clayton says this is a good point. You don't care about losing the picks, and I think we all care about losing the picks and and also the international bonus money, because you're going to lose another $1 million if you sign them. So that's going to drag your total that you have for 2026 down even lower. I mean, they'll have like 4 million and change at that point, in a signing class where they're supposed to get one of the top guys again. I don't think it would impact them getting Luis Hernandez, but you're going to have a really thin overall international class if that's really all you can afford. So I think it's a fair thing to be concerned about, like losing the picks and the bonus money. But it comes down to if they're trying to win now, and by now it doesn't necessarily have to mean in 2025, but like, are they trying to build this up to being a really solid team within like 2 years? Because if you are, then you can't worry about the picks. You got to do what you got to do to build this team up. If you are going to take a little more of a long-term approach and you're understanding that, we're not going to catch LA, probably even San Diego for the next few years. You could maybe even Arizona, though they're going to probably take a step back in 25 or in 26 after next season because of all the people that are free agents that we've talked about in previous shows. But if you're going to take a long-term approach and say, hey, we're probably not going to catch those two teams in the next couple of years, let's focus on internal development with the young guys, then maybe you don't want to fork out a whole ton of picks yet so you can keep building up your farm system. So
and to a lot of the comments points, which we've had discussions about privately, there was no murmurs at all about Adames, and that signing came out of nowhere.
So I'm gonna share this because we're gonna talk a little bit about Alonso as well. I didn't want to just gloss over him since he is the one that we're actually kind of reported as interested in. Kind of to Dan's point, it's not been a guy that I particularly care for the fit. Now, I don't like saying he's not a fit, because anytime you can add a 40 homer guy that, I think Kaspic might have tweeted it. I don't remember who, but he said 90% of the home runs that he's hit would have left Oracle. But then you look at the expected home runs by park, the number goes way down. Although I guess 208 out of 231. Oh yeah, that's like 90%, I guess.
Yeah.
So he would probably get hurt, but you look at where he hits a lot of his home runs, they're majority center field and left field, which are as fair as it's going to get in Oracle Park. So he's got massive power. To answer Rob's question about his D, it's absolutely atrocious. It's not good. He would be a DH sooner than later. Now I know he works hard. Like I don't think it's something where he doesn't, try. I think there was a video a couple years ago that came out with him at the All-Star break or All-Star game, and he was working with Ron Washington at first base. So like he clearly cares about it and he's trying, but he's just not good over there. So, but he could be a short-term guy that if you sign him to a long-term deal, you move off or you move to DH once Bryce is up. But, like we were saying earlier, I think they need more of a guy that hits from the left side. I think that's what this lineup needs for balance and everything.
Yeah.
So, it just really depends on what direction you want to go. Obviously, we all expect Alonso to get a lot more as far as AAV goes than Santander. It just really depends. For me, one of the biggest questions I have is, okay, say Eldridge doesn't even come up at all this year and you just have Alonso penciled in as your first baseman for this year and maybe even next year. But then Bryce comes up and you still have Alonso locked up for another 3 to 4 years. Is Alonso going to be cool with going to DH, or is he going to throw a fit over it and cause a ton of issues in the clubhouse? I do have some concerns about that. And then, if he's trying to just get, like I said, a shorter prove it deal, I'm completely out on that. You did that with Snell last year. You got absolutely burned, and it's just not worth it. And that's what I'm saying. I can live with giving up draft picks and pool money on one of these bigger hitters, but you better have them locked up long term because they need to fill a hole long term, so you can basically get away with not having those picks to replenish your big league roster within a few years.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, that's what I've been saying. There's a lot of people on like X and different, social medias that are angry about the Burns thing still. And they're like, well, why couldn't we give this deal? And it's like, if they wanted the opt out, like to me, that was a non-starter. Any opt out before year 4 to me was just a non-starter. If they wanted to do it at year 4 and Burns, played 4 years and then wanted to opt out of his last 2 or 3 or whatever, and I'd have been like, cool, man, thanks for giving us 4 years of basically your prime and bailing on us before we were paying a 36-year-old $35 million. I'd have been all for that. But, giving him an opt out after 2 years, I mean, you're basically saying we better compete in the next 2 years because we think he's probably going to perform well enough to opt out pitching in Oracle Park. And if he walks, then it's like, great, you just lost 2 picks. It didn't amount to anything. And now you're kind of once again trying to find a guy at the top of your rotation, which they've done a decent job of over the last 3 years since, Gossman walked. They got Rodon for a year and Snell for one of the years. But, that year in the middle, they had Sean Manaea a year early and Ross Stripling. So and that production killed you. So I'm just, to me, if you're trying to build a winner, like we got to get away from these opt-outs right now. So 100% agree with you guys. Like it's got to be longer term deals if we're going to do that. So.
Yeah. And the thing is, I know we have some people in the chat that are, questioning whether or not we should be giving up draft picks. And I totally hear that argument. I think myself, Dan, and Cody are all of the mindset. If you want to do that, you got to really go fully in on winning, these next couple of years if you're going to go that route. I am totally fine with going the route too of saying, screw it, we're not getting any of these guys anyways. We're not going to pay all this money. We're going to make sure we know what we have in-house this year before we go, a little bit more all in next year when we can reset the tax, and, see what we actually have this year in Matos, Luciano, Harrison, Wizenhunt, Birdsong, even Fitz, Casey Schmidt, just go and do a full-on evaluation this year of what you have. You filled a big hole at shortstop, and then now kind of see if you can plug and play some of these young guys in these other spots. And then, maybe you surprisingly compete and you're one of the top wild card teams this year at the deadline. And then maybe you get aggressive at that point, rather than locking yourself into these long-term deals when you're kind of unsure of what you have in-house. So I could honestly live with either side of it. It's just, like we always say, pick a direction, stick to it. Don't, ride the fence and stay down the middle and then get these little short-term opt-out deals where it doesn't really help you in the short term or the long term.
Yeah. I mean, that's been my biggest complaint to you guys personally on the show, on X, whatever. It's just agree to a direction and stick to it. It's the in between. Oh, we're gonna do a little bit of both. We're gonna play our vets, and we're gonna sign our little opt out deals, and then we're gonna kind of give some guys a chance, and then we're gonna kind of teeter totter some, and we're just gonna hang around 500. It's like, now, do you go all in to win or all in to see what you got? And that's where I'm at and what I want to see. So
yeah, I agree. It's just pick a direction, pick a lane. How many times, for anybody that's been watching this show since, for the last 13, 14 months, since I started it last year, or in 2023, end of 2023, how many times have I said, pick a direction? It's the fact that I'm still saying it 14 months later kind of makes me angry, but we're still kind of at that point. Now I'm going to give Posey a lot more patience because he's been here for 2 months doing it. Farhan was in year 6 when I was saying that. So he didn't have the luxury of me being patient on that one. But Posey, it's like, they do need to pick a direction, and it very well might be, for those of you that watched the last video, we were talking about, like, are they about to just embrace the youth with the starting rotation? And we all have our, concerns over that, we'll say, but if that's the route they want to go and they want to play some of these other young guys, then so be it. Commit to that. That's all we're asking. Like, go ahead and move a Mike Yastrzemski. Go move a Lamont Wade Jr. Just clear the way for these guys and get out of their way and let the kids play. And you might not be great, but at least the Giants fan base would have a very clear idea of what you are doing at that point.
Yeah. That's what we deserve, truthfully.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like I told you guys privately, it's like, I understand it's a business at the end of the day. These front offices and these teams, they want to have their poker face on. I get it. But when you come out year after year, like ownership has done, and say, oh, we want to break even. Oh, we want to cut payroll. Oh, we're here to win. Oh, we want to spend money. Oh, this is the first of many signings, blah, blah. And then, still fail to kind of give any sense of direction and ultimately just kind of get the fan base's hopes up on a consistent basis. It's like, that's what drives me crazy. Mm-hmm. It's like, I would be perfectly fine, which obviously it's not going to happen, but I'd be perfectly fine if they came out and just say, hey, we're probably going to go pretty light on free agency. We want to see what we have in house. Thank you. That's wonderful. That's music to my ears, but it's the constant teeter-totter and it just drives me crazy. And to Tom's point where he says, I don't really think it's completely either, or I think you want to internally develop, but you need to exploit opportunities when it comes to available talent. I mean, that, yes, you're correct to an extent, but
high-end talent.
Exactly. High-end talent is key there. If you're not pursuing high-end talent, you're relying on veteran deals, and the high-end talent you do pursue is like we've seen in the years past, where you're going to sign a guy with a qualifying offer attached to him, forfeit 2 draft picks, international money, and then lose that guy for nothing. It's like you're just shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah. I think everybody that's watched this enough knows how I feel when it comes to, if your team's not good enough to make the playoffs. I don't really give a rat's if you win 70 games or if you win 84 games. If you miss the playoffs, you miss the playoffs. You just weren't good enough. And so to me, having guys like Yaz and Wade and whoever else, taking up significant at bats, Flores, Canna, Murphy, and you need some vets, of course. But like last year, Nick Ahmed playing significant time. Slater was playing significant, he was a platoon player, but he was taking a lot of at bats before they finally moved on. Like having all these guys taking significant amounts of at bats and playing time when you are a middle of the road 80 win team, they've averaged 80 wins exactly the last 3 years. When that's what you are, it serves no purpose at the end of the day. You finish the year out, think about how we all felt at the end of 2023, watching Conforto and Haniger and all these different guys, all the vets play. And it was like, great, we won 79 games. What did we get out of this? Well, I guess Bailey kind of emerged a little bit, and Schmidt had a hot 2 weeks, and Matos kind of flashed a couple things, I guess. And we got like 4 starts of Kyle Harrison at the end of the year. I mean, it was like, what did we have to look forward to the following season? More veterans playing? At least last season, Bailey won a Gold Glove and flashed with Lee. That's a 25-year-old that's going to be around. Ramos breaks out. Like that has people excited. Fitz showed a lot of potential with the speed and power. At least now going into next season, we have some excitement around some of these guys. Guys like Grant McCray, that he probably needs more time in the minors, but if they were to play him, the speed's electric. So his defense, and when he gets on base and he can wreak havoc like that would be exciting. There are some things to look forward to if they go with some of these young guys. And then guys like Birdsong and Harrison, who, we all have concerns with Harrison's, diminished velocity and stuff like that. But I think the talent is still there. Birdsong, the talent's clearly still there. Like there is a lot of upside with the young pitching. So we can all get behind that if that's the route they want to go, and just understand that there's going to be growing pains, but at least we can watch the team grow together, and hopefully turn into a winner in a couple years.
Yeah.
But for me, it's don't insult the intelligence of Giants fans that know what the hell's going on. It's like 49er media just said a few minutes ago, you can't do the 2 timeline thing. It doesn't matter whether you're talking the NFL, the MLB, NHL, NBA, you cannot do the 2 timeline thing. Ultimately, when you have a group of young players that you have not made an evaluation on for the last 2 to 3 years at the big league level, it comes down to, if you're adding in a veteran, are they going to be a plug and play starter for the next 3 to 4 years? If the answer is yes, and they're a star level talent, then you go and get them. If they're not, and they're going to be a marginal upgrade and it might win you an extra couple games this year, don't do it. Get an evaluation going on these young players and see what you have, because ultimately you've wasted away the last 3 years on short-term contracts on veteran players, and you haven't got fair evaluations on your players. Obviously, Adames is more a star level talent, but the difference with Adames and going and getting a guy like that on a qualifying offer is, with Adames, you're filling a spot both in the short term and the long term, because you really don't have that, next level or that next guy to come in and step up and play shortstop. You've already evaluated that Luciano and Fitz are not your answer at shortstop. So you solidify that position with a veteran that can come in and help you win games now. In some of these other positions, that's not the case. You have guys like Fitz and Schmidt that you don't have a real full evaluation on at second. You got a little bit of an evaluation last year with Fitz coming through late in the season and looking like a piece. But then you still have left field, right field, and first base that are all big question marks. If you're not going to make huge upgrades there that are going to help you the next few seasons, don't go and get some vet that's going to stick around and block these young players from getting playing time. Same thing on the pitching side. Somebody mentioned in the comments, you can still go and evaluate and then also go and add like higher end talent. Like we've mentioned with, Pablo Lopez, Freddie Peralta, guys like that on the trade market that could actually be legitimate, front of the rotation starters for you. Those are guys you can identify to bring in here and help you win now and help you also in the long term. take up a spot. But you can't keep going out and getting the Confortos, the Hanigers, the Wades, the Yazes. You got to move off of those guys and start giving a full season's worth of run to these young guys, whether it's, McRae, Fitz, Schmidt, even Lee, honestly. Any of these younger guys, you got to get a full season's worth of playing in and see what you have.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point where you touched on, trapping some of these younger players and not getting a fair evaluation, Elliot Ramos is a prime example of that last year, because I remember I made a tweet about it, and it kind of blew up on X, where I said, if the only reason that Ramos got an opportunity last year was because Slater was hurt, Lee got hurt, and Meckler they were all hurt at the same time. That's the only reason that Ramos got a chance, and he took full advantage of it. Had those works of God not happened, Ramos would still be trapped to this day. And like you touched on, rather than giving your young players like that a fair opportunity, you're going after the Confortos, you're going after the Hanigers, you're plugging Jock in left field, you're plugging Blake Sable on left, you're bringing up Wade Meckler 3 years early. Like you're doing all these foolish things without giving your potential stars a fair chance. So that's like a prime example of what I'm talking about right here. So I'm all for it. I'm all for giving the young guys a shot. It's just give them a legit chance, give them a legit opportunity to shine.
And yeah, I mean, exactly to your point with Ramos, and this is kind of the same point with a lot of players coming up, is it's funny, and I'm not gonna throw any people in particular under the bus on this, but like I had somebody tell me the other day, these players aren't ready and they won't be ready. And it's like, I'm sorry, if you ask 90% of the Giants fan base in front office, Ramos wasn't ready last season. Yeah. Oops. Now, I was one of the few people that defended him. I know you guys defended him. There were some of us that defended Ramos and said, give this guy a real shot and let's just see, because you could see the potential with him, and you just never know when a young player is going to put it together. No. And that's why we've brought up guys like, maybe go chase a guy like Spencer Torkelson. It's why I was against trading Bart last season, because I said there's signs were there that he was figuring it out. Let's see if they can put it together finally. And you just never know when a guy like Luis Matos it's gonna click for him.
Yeah.
And he's gonna all of a sudden be a 280 hitter. And maybe he never is. He might not be, but are we really better off as a franchise watching Mike Yastrzemski at 35 years old hit 230 with 18 home runs, 7 of which come in the last 3 weeks when you're mathematically eliminated? And are we really better off with that? Because hey, he plays a mean right field. Like, great, we still won 80 games. Who gives a rat's? Like, no, we're not. Like, play the kid that actually has some significant upside that brings things that this team needs with his bat to ball skills. I mean, his hit tool is legit. If he can figure out some, cleaning up a little bit of his swing decisions and using the entire field, which he's done a good job of in winter ball, which, will that translate? I don't know. We'll find out. But, let's see if he can put it together with you in the regular season.
Touching on that, this is on topic, but a little off topic. You know what I just thought about that was so funny? Remember in spring training when Joey Bart was our best hitter and fans were complaining, all he does is hit singles. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? You're mad that he's getting
Vlad
on
Jr. on line one.
Yeah.
And exactly. Oh, but Lamont gets on base. It's like, bro, Joey was doing the same thing and you guys were hating him. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
That drove me crazy. Not just because you were talking about, like, oh, he's starting to put it together. It was like, yeah, that was a sign, but we went with Tom freaking Murphy instead.
Yeah. My thing with Bart was always, and nobody wanted to acknowledge this. Like, they complained in 2022 that he struck out too much. So he works on his approach and he starts putting the ball in play. He cuts down the swing and miss. He cuts down the strikeouts a bunch in 2023. And you could see he was putting the ball in play more consistently. And everyone's like, well, now all he's doing is hitting singles. It's like, guys, it's not like the power just disappeared overnight. Like, he was still producing huge exit velocities. I'm like, at some point it will click for him. If you keep putting the ball in play, at some point you are going to barrel up more balls and you're going to actually hit for some power again as his approach improves. And sure enough, they cut bait too early. You know, in spring training, you see him just hitting balls hard. He's getting on base. He's making good swing decisions. He's getting everything he's doing is good. And then, you know, he goes to Pittsburgh and he just breaks out. It's like, and everyone goes, well, no one could have seen this coming. And I'm like, did you not pay attention?
He saw it coming right here.
Yeah. Drives me insane, man. It's just lazy, honestly.
Go ahead, Ricky.
And I think one thing we're all guilty of too as fans is we got to take a step back, especially with these high school and international kids. Like these guys are 22 and 23-year-old kids. And we've got to remember, if you go and draft one of these guys out of college, that's about what they are when you first draft them. And you're still giving them 2 to 3 years to actually be a solid contributor at the big league level after 2, 3, 4 years of college baseball, where a guy like Matos, Luciano, like, let's not give up on these guys yet, unless it's going to be to bring in some proven talent in a trade. Because even a guy like Luciano, he's still got an extremely high ceiling as a hitter. And, you know, he's, I think, going to be 23 this season. And same thing with Matos. Like, these guys are incredibly young. Like, it takes time. And the same thing with Ramos. People are so down on him. But like Cody and Dan said, there were signs. Not last season, but the season before. If any of you guys followed what Ramos was doing in SAC, he really started to turn it on big time, especially in the power department in SAC. And then it's like, okay, let's see what he does the next season. He starts out in SAC last year, immediately takes off where he left the year before. And what do you know? He gets consistent playing time. The team shows confidence in him once he has a solidified spot, and then he ends up being an all-star. So obviously that's not going to happen with all these guys, but you have to give some of these guys a chance, and you'll be surprised what comes out of it.
100%.
Yeah. I think my biggest gripe on the whole Ramos thing when he was down there wasn't even just the people that like didn't believe in them. The one that I heard last year was people going, he needs to pull the ball in the air more. I'm like, can we stop trying to make every player the same thing? Like, can we stop trying to force every player into being the same exact type of player? Because then he shows up and he hits like half his home runs to center field, and he's hitting them, 30 feet over the fence in center. And it's like, yeah, he really needed to pull that one, guys. Like in a night game. It's like,
newsflash: the Giants have the shortest center field fence in all of baseball. That has changed. So, yeah, let your guy hit the ball up the middle, and he'll get a ton of homers.
Yeah,
and that's actually something I heard with, if you're one of those people that wants Pete Alonso, is he hits a ton of balls to dead center too that would have gone out at Oracle that weren't going out in New York. So that's another thing. If you guys are on the Alonso train, is he could end up hitting more than he's hit in the last couple of years in New York. So something to keep in mind too, that, we don't really talk about as much, just because we're always talking about, how night games play at home. So,
yeah. And one thing to add to the Alonso thing, just for anybody that's wondering, because if you're like me, you've been thoroughly annoyed at the Giants' performance with runners in scoring position over the last few years. Pete Alonso with runners in scoring position hits 256 with a 911 OPS. So, and that's his career numbers, and that's over almost 1,000 plate appearances. So really, quality player with runners in scoring position. And it's no surprise when you look at his RBI totals year after year. He's had a lot of 100+ RBI seasons, which I get it. Everyone, RBIs are not the, tell all for everything. But when you're a team that's struggled to score runs, having a guy that is a good run, high-end run producer is a good thing.
So, Taran, we got Strickland, a low A, no name reliever for Joey Bart. Yeah. I don't even know his first name. Austin Strickland.
Yes.
Not Hunter.
Yeah.
But just to pull this up, just for people. Oh, not that one. Sorry.
And for comparison, and I'm not even exaggerating, I'm pretty sure Ricky's a better pitcher than Austin Strickland. So that's not a diss at Ricky.
Here he's got a meaner changeup at least.
He's got a higher ground ball rate for sure. So
yeah,
No doubt.
So obviously with Pete, his entire value is going to come offensively in the batter's box. You're not going to get anything really out of him defensively. You're going to get even less out of him base running wise because he's just not got anything for speed. Some of the things I will say that actually shocked me because for some reason I always thought he was like a high 20% strikeout rate. It was a little better than I expected. Last season it was 24.7. If you go back the year before, it was actually even better. It was 22.9. Year before that, 18.7. I think he actually had a couple years in the middle where he was pretty sub 20. So had a couple years, didn't, strike out a ton. His walk rates have always been pretty solid from the looks of it. His chase rate improved a lot last season. So, and the batted ball metrics always are going to stand out with Pete Alonso. Just something that, when he does barrel it up, he's got one of the, the ball just jumps off his bat. So I don't want to sit here and sound like someone that says like, oh, Pete Alonso doesn't have a place on this team, because he absolutely would. It's just, you're going to probably end up DHing him. And as these, boys talked about earlier, if is he going to be open to that when you bring Bryce up? And that's something that you really have to know and consider. Jumping on to Cube asked a question here. Let me scroll back up for it. Word is that Vlad Jr. wants around $450 million to extend. Do you want him at that price? Do you think he's worth a package of Matos, wasn't hunting Luciano? Absolutely. If that's what it took, I would do that deal.
I was going to say, if that's all he costs, you're doing that all day.
And I love Luis Matos. You guys know that. Marco Luciano, I still believe could figure it out. I'm not as high on him as some of the other prospects, and Wisenhunt, I'm actually personally not as high as a lot of people are. I think none of us really are in this group, but he has a disgusting changeup, but he's got some other issues with his command and his other pitches. But if that's all it costs to get Vladdy, 100% I'd pull that trigger. Even without an extension, I would pull that trigger and just try to get him extended. But I would give him 450. I mean, Vladdy, when he's right, he's a top 10 hitter in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Overall hitter.
You make that deal and you get Felipe Alou to just sweet talk him.
Felipe, this is the one last thing we need you to do. Get this guy to sign.
No. And I mean, if you bring in a guy like Vladdy, who's still fairly young, like he's a lot younger than your average free agent, will be at the end of this coming season. I definitely think that could really help you on the international market as well, recruiting some of these young guys to come over as well. And that's something the Giants have really needed. Obviously, they've done better in recent years at recruiting some of these younger top international prospects, but you haven't really had a ton of those guys actually hit at the big league level yet. So I definitely think that could really make a difference for you. Did want to touch on Ed's comment on Yoshida. I'm assuming you mean for DH there as far as trading for him. Me personally, I think he's a solid player, but at 18 mil, he's not really a power guy. I'd rather, like I said before, I'd rather spend almost that same amount of money per year on Santander, who's going to give you, over double the amount of homers each year. I don't think it would cost you a ton to get rid of him, because Boston, since last year, has kind of been trying to get out of that contract. I do think he fits well in this park, but he's a high average guy, not going to hit for a ton of power, but I personally wouldn't go after a guy like that.
Yeah. I do want to answer a couple questions. People threw some in the chat here. Starting off with Graham. Santander hit with runners in scoring position. He has almost 800 plate appearances, 251 average, 771 OPS. So not as much pop as Pete. They both play in kind of, I think, similarly ranked ballparks as far as fairness to hitters. Like, I think they're both pretty neutral at best. Yeah. Maybe even a little more pitcher friendly. So not quite as much pop, but still productive with runners in scoring position. The other one that I wanted to answer was Taylor asked, I don't remember seeing Gerard Encarnacion play first base last season. Can he play first? And my answer to that would be I've seen he's actually played a little bit of first base, but it's super limited. When you kind of look through what he did in the minor leagues at various levels, you'd see like 20 games here, 15 games here. Every season it seemed like he played 100 to 200 innings tops at first base. So could he play first base? Potentially. I mean, I've brought it up as maybe he's an option to platoon with Wade, but I haven't seen him play first, so I don't know if he's just like a hazard over there or what. So I couldn't really give strong feelings on that one, but I've seen he has done it.
He was sneaky athletic in the outfield for being such a big guy last year. So I don't see any reason why he couldn't play first. I mean, he can't be worse than Wilmer.
Hey, Wilmer can pick it. He's just got negative range.
Yeah.
If you hit a ground ball 8 inches to the right of him, he's just falling down.
He might tear his ACL.
He's just he's just dropping down, bro.
Oh man.
Lamont Wade's not great at first defensively either. A little bit more range than Wilmer, but man, he scares the living crap out of me when he gets a grounder to first and tries to turn it over to second. Like, man, I've seen some really ugly plays out of Wade the last 2 seasons over at first. But if they don't go and get anybody for first base, they definitely need to go and experiment with some of these things in spring training for sure.
Yeah.
Because Gerard, he showed like a ton of power in a short sample size, both in Sacramento and even with the Giants. So it's
27.
Yeah, and he's shown that off in other places too. It's just it was always strikeout issues with him, and he definitely showed a big improvement on that when he was in Sacramento last year. So
yeah,
I definitely think you got to get some kind of evaluation on that guy too. Doesn't hurt to have another guy, especially again, if Bryce isn't ready, maybe that's your guy that you pivot to and platoon him with Wade temporarily.
Yeah.
Came out of the Mexican League, Holmes.
Yeah. And for anybody, like I said, he's only 27. For anybody that is like, he hasn't really done anything up until this point. Hey, Max Muncy broke out at 27 for the Dodgers.
Yeah.
So you never know with some of these power guys.
Rooker.
Like Rooker just had that late breakout with Oakland. It just, you never know some of these guys when they're just going to like out of nowhere just take off and you have something. So I would love to see Gerard get some opportunities next season, whether that's DHing, whether that's occasional starts in the outfield, first base. I mean, I would love to see them find a way to get him some at bats. So definitely some potential. But let's turn the page over to the Baggerly article. We kind of went off on that run for a while. We're gonna move over to the Jose Bautista. There's another one. So we're gonna move over to the Baggerly article. So Andrew Baggerly, he wrote an article saying that the Giants have been, obviously they had that hot start with Willy Adames. They've been pretty quiet since then. I don't think they've actually made a roster move at all since the Adames thing. And he said that they were very active in trade talks, trying to trade for Garrett Crochet and Kyle Tucker, which both are guys that it would have made sense from a roster standpoint. Adding, obviously they could really use another starter, and Kyle Tucker is one of the better pure hitters in baseball and athletic, and just would have helped this team in so many ways. Now, both teams wanted Bryce Eldridge, and the Giants said no, they weren't going to include him in any deal. And frankly, when you look at what was given up for those guys, Bryce Eldridge would have been the best prospect in either deal. So I get that Posey, doesn't want to part with him, but it kind of shines a light on the rest of the system, because they did say they put together packages that made them uncomfortable, but they were still willing to offer it, which that's a good sign, because I felt like with Farhan, he had too many guys that he was just like, I can't part with that guy. Harrison was one of them, and I get it, but now we're kind of looking at it going, should you have? So it tells me, like I mentioned earlier, any player would have been on the table outside of Bryce, which I'm all for, but it kind of shows like this system, it just might not be ready for these guys to be able to actually make the trades that they might want to. And, we pair this up with the Bleacher Report article that came out where they were ranked dead last again. And I've seen a couple different sites that have had the Giants ranked either last or they're like 28th, 29th, they're somewhere in that last couple three. And, I obviously have my feelings on how bad their system is. Like, I think it's actually not quite, god awful or anything like that, but it's definitely lacking in the top end. So I want to get your guys' thoughts on, what do you guys think of the system right now? And you can also tell me about what you think about them trying to be active in trade talks. And then also, how long of a rebuild of this system do you really think it's going to be?
So to your point, it's kind of the opposite as far as what we experienced with Farhan, because he was so unwilling to move his prospects, but at the same time, he was so unwilling to give them a chance. So he just kind of let them rot, which sucks because it killed a lot of their value. Because I think if you're talking some of these guys last year in discussions, that we were having recently in trades for like Tucker or Crochet or whatnot, then you have guys, who used to be higher prospects, Ramos and Luciano and whatnot, where they actually had value. And now all that value is diminished and gone, as referring more towards Luciano. So it sucks because, to your point, and like we touched on briefly earlier, Maniason's he specializes in trades. A lot of these guys that were brought into Posey's front office and his little core, they specialize in trades. They look to make moves like that, and it's clear that they want to do that in order to add some talent on this team. It's just your trade pieces outside of Eldridge are really limited, and it's a shame. So to your point, it's like what you're left with right now, you're probably not going to be able to get a lot for. But at the same time, some of these other trades that were made, I think like Naylor, for example, with the package that, they gave up for Naylor, you could have done something like a Mason Black, for example, to land them maybe another smaller piece. So it's like, which players are you attempting to move is the question. And if anybody's on the table outside of Bryce, and it's still that hard to, find a trade partner, that just speaks volumes, like you said, as far as what this new regime was left with when they came in. So it might be a couple years to rebuild the farm. I think they can, at least get a start on it this year. But it's tough, because then it kind of goes hand in hand with what's your plan, what's your vision, what's your goal for this team. Do you want to go and rebuild the farm, and you want to rebuild your system and, go with your younger guys, or do you want to risk signing guys with QOs and giving up more draft capital, more international money, which could potentially sabotage you from building up that farm system? So it's tough.
Yeah, so I think there's multiple layers to this question for me. I think it starts out with last year was really a bad year all around for the Giants in terms of development goes. When you look at their farm system top to bottom, you have a lot of guys that had down years last year for the most part. You did have a few guys that stood out. I think Whitman really, picked it up late in the year, and he's like one of those guys that stood out. Obviously, Hayden Birdsong was a huge riser in the system last year. But really overall, you look at a lot of guys and you didn't really get a clear answer on what you have in them, as far as like some of the fringe big leaguers like Luis Matos and some of those guys that have graduated from prospect status. But when you look at some of the other guys, you have guys at the top of their farm system who either have recently been drafted, like we're talking this season, or you have guys that are international prospects that are really high ceiling guys that just are really young. So you haven't really seen, any kind of pro production from them as far as being in the States. A lot of it comes from, being out in like the Dominican leagues and stuff like that. So I think it's really just hard for a lot of prospect rankings to really, put the Giants high as I think they should be. I don't see them being, anywhere in the top 15 personally. but I think 15 to 20 is a fair range for the Giants. I really don't see them as the worst farm system in the league at all. One of the sites that recently did a farm system rankings was Bleacher Report, and I just completely disagree with them ranking the Giants 30th. And a lot of it honestly comes down to the way they rank farm systems, and it's all on a tier basis by, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 off of the top 10 guys. And part of the issue is you have Bryce, who's a very clear, obvious tier 1 guy, but then you have guys that have very high ceilings that, in my opinion, are not in the third tier, like Dakota Jordan, Rainer Arias, Joe Whitman. Those are all guys that they put as tier 3 guys, and I just completely disagree on that evaluation. And it really comes down to them not being super proven guys is why they're putting them, that low. But ultimately, I think you do have a lot of trade assets. It's just you need to have these guys show a little bit more this year, and it could completely change the outlook of what they have in-house as far as tradable assets go. And then, of course, the international prospects that are predicted to sign with the Giants here in the next, 2 weeks now, or less than 2 weeks, could completely change these rankings for the Giants on most sites. They're predicted to get the top international prospect outside of Roki Sasaki. So that would completely change the top half of the Giant system.
Yeah. So this is, I love that George threw Sasaki into here. So where I'm going to say, or what I'm going to say is I agree with Ricky where this could change super fast. So right now, obviously Bryce is ranked number 35. I'm just going off of MLB. I don't know what Baseball America, I don't know what their rankings look like. But MLB, they have Bryce ranked number 35. Tibbs is ranked number 88. One thing that we all have to factor, the elephant in the room with the Giants, prospect list, is they've had like 5 different top 100 guys, or 6 or 7 or whatever guys, either graduate off the list because they accumulated too much time in the majors, or they, fell off the list due to whatever performance. Like Carson Whisenhunt, he was ranked, I think, as high as like number 70 last season. And then he fell off because he had a rough year, particularly on the road. He was really dominant at home, had a rough go on the road. But they've had about, I think, 7 guys. Like Marco Luciano was on there. Kyle Harrison was on there. Hayden Birdsong had gotten on the top 100. Casey Schmidt, Luis Matos. And then Elliot Ramos had been. And then he came off a couple years ago. So they've had a lot of guys that are there. And when they do these farm system rankings, so much of it is potential or whatever, prospect ceiling. And then, then they kind of factor in production. And sometimes, I don't necessarily agree as much where they'll like rank a guy super high that's an A-ball that's been not impressive at all, but he's very toolsy. I don't, we see that particularly if you are in the blue and white, they tend to be very favorable to those guys. But you see the Giants system right now, and I see a lot of guys that are going to be making their debuts in A-ball, because the reality is you look at the top 100 list, there's not a ton of guys in rookie ball. In the complex leagues, Dominican leagues, that you're not going to see a lot of guys in those. So they don't really debut until they get to full season ball. So when I look at the Giants list, I see Jordan, Arias, Whitman, and then obviously Walker Martin had a disappointing year last season, but he's still a guy that has high-end tools, second-round pick. A lot of guys had a first-round grade on him, 2013. So he's the kind of guy that these lists really like. So I see those 4 guys as people that if they have really solid years, we could potentially see all 4 of those guys climb onto the list. And then based on, what we have beyond that, like I mentioned, most of these guys don't really debut until they get to full season ball. Johnny Level's a guy I really like. He's super toolsy. He could probably shoot up the list pretty fast. You have guys like Jacob Christian, who he's not going to be super highly rated, at least initially, but he's a guy that with his power potential and things like that, he could climb maybe in a year or 2 if he ends up being really good. Jeremiah Jenkins is another name. Some guys like Oliver Tejada. So they have some really nice toolsy players.
Oh, Davidson.
Bo. He's a little older, so I don't know if they would really like that, but you have a lot of these guys that are like right down an A ball right now that are really about to get their first go. So if they hit on some of these guys, you could see their rankings really shoot up rapidly. Now, I'm not predicting all of these guys are going to have good years and end up on the top 100 list because that's just not realistic. But the main point is just this could change rapidly. It's just unfortunately where they are today, almost all of these guys are unproven in the minor leagues. So the other teams are just looking at it going, well, it's a toolsy guy, but I'm not giving, that can't be your centerpiece on these deals. In a year where all of these guys have gotten a full season and full season ball, hopefully, it might be a different story. So the Giants next season, I think, will have a lot more luck when it comes to trying to get trades done, or maybe even by midseason. Maybe they make it, if they surprise some people and they're competitive, maybe they make a deadline deal and they have a little more to offer at that point. So I do feel like there's a lot of potential. And then to everyone's point, there's guys like Hoswar Gonzalez. He's going to be probably the second he gets to A ball, he's going to be a guy that shoots up the rankings super fast. They're getting Gene Macaris and Julian Barreto. Those are two other guys that are going to get 7-figure signing bonuses. They could be, viewed pretty highly in a year or two when they get to the full season ball. So, I mean, those guys take time because they play a lot of times a year in the summer league. Then they go to the complex league and it just takes them some time to get to full season ball. But when they get there, don't be shocked if they get ranked super highly.
Yeah. Joshua Gonzalez is going to be, he'll be in like the top, probably 6 or 7 guys right away just because of his status. You saw that with Arias and, guys like Luciano. They usually throw guys in like in that range pretty quickly, if they're the top of their free agent or their international prospect class. And there's honestly a lot of shuffling that needs to be done to like the MLB rankings, for example. There's guys that are, way high up there because they're college guys, they're drafted highly, they haven't really done anything. And then there's younger guys that they just haven't really caught on to yet. Like Cody said, you have a lot of guys that have been playing outside of the U.S. and haven't even entered rookie ball yet, but they're super high upside guys. So I do think there is a lot of depth and potential in the system. I mean, I specifically remember some of the years when the Giants were actually winning World Series where the system had gotten very barren, and even guys down in the 15 to 30 range in the Giants system were just very low ceiling, very mediocre floor type players. And I don't really feel like the Giants have that. There's a ton of high ceiling guys, especially in the most recent draft class. The most recent draft class is loaded with tons of power hitting for the Giants. So like Cody said, I think that's something we could see really take off this year, come trade deadline time.
Yeah. Like this, just kind of to Ricky's point, like some of these guys that are still playing over in the DSL and things like that. This was Johnny Level, who was their big international signee in 2023. 2024 signing period. He was last January. He was their big signee. He's gotten, they give out the comps for different players, and he got like Rafael Furcal comps. Is he going to be that player? Probably not. But, that was kind of the comparison with his game. And he showed up, he bulked up a bit. All of a sudden he has 22 extra base hits and 18 stolen bases with a, hits 275 and a 910 OPS as a 17-year-old in the summer league. So he's going to climb the Giants rankings. I think it was down in the 20s last season. He's up to 13. He'll probably start the year in the complex league if he has a really good time or if he has a good production in the complex league. Maybe he gets up to San Jose next season. And that's when you could see a guy like this jump on the list. A guy like Rainer Arias, people are super high on. But unfortunately for him, he's had 2 really bad wrist injuries the last 2 years where it's kind of killed his production. And he hasn't really been able to show what he can be. So It's entirely possible he'll probably start the year in San Jose. If he stays healthy, I think first and foremost, we'll be able to see what he can do. And if he's really productive, don't be shocked if he just rockets up lists, because there are a lot of people around baseball and a lot of scouts and a lot of people that do these lists and these publications that openly talk about how high they are on him. I think MLB.com wrote a list of their breakout they like chose a breakout prospect for every team. Jim Callis and those guys, they named Rainer Arias as their guy. And kind of what I'm saying, same thing. They're like, if he stays healthy, look out. This guy can be really good. So it could change quick. That's all we're going to say as far as, the Giants farm system at this point, because we don't agree that it's ranked as poorly as it is. They're deeper than they've been in years past, top to bottom, but they just kind of lack the high-end talent right now, but that could change.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Ricky said earlier. It's they're insulting our intelligence, guys.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's a huge year for development, like I said. You have a bunch of these guys that have graduated from prospect status, and we've got to see what they can do at the big league level. And now you're looking at a huge pool of guys that are in the, low A and high A levels. And we really need to see some production out of them if we want to, really have the farm system loaded up with a lot of tradable assets, because the talent's definitely there. But ultimately, when you have scouts from other teams going and looking at our farm, they need to see these guys on the field, and they need to see production ultimately before they're going to sign off on, oh yeah, go ahead and make that trade with the Giants for, their number 2 and number 5 prospects for our guy. They need to see these guys on the field. Like Reggie Crawford's another guy. He's not super highly ranked, but if he's actually on the field and can stay healthy for a full season, it completely changes the outlook people are going to have on him, because he has, high-end closer type potential if he actually fulfills it and stays healthy. So a lot can change.
And that's where like Manassian's job when he was in Milwaukee, where he was a director of pro personnel, like that's their job, is to like be able to provide scouting reports on all players in professional ball. So when you're going to that guy, when Buster Posey's going to his version of whoever their director of pro personnel is, I mean, Manassian did it so much that he's probably pretty well versed in it, we would assume. But when they go to that guy, like that guy needs to have been able to see these players at more than just the college level in the recent seasons. And the Giants just have had so many guys that have been hurt, or they're just now hitting pro ball. So, fingers crossed. And exactly Ricky's point, I 100% agree. It's not just that we're hoping these guys are great so they can be great in San Francisco. You want these guys to be really good because you need tradable assets. Like that's the reality. And they don't currently really have that right now, other than at the major league level. And I do question how willing they are to move guys like Harrison Birdsong. Obviously Bailey's not going anywhere. Ramos isn't going anywhere. So like there are guys up at the major league level that I don't think there's as much willingness. So if you're going to limit yourself to more what's down in the farm, it gets tricky.
It's to your guys' point. It sucks because the Giants have, value, quote unquote, in their very, very low farm system. Like you guys pointed out, some of those younger international guys, low A ball to high A ball, and then nothing in the middle, and then a little bit of value at the very top with those guys you touched on with Harrison and Birdsong and stuff like that. So it's like it's that in-between gap that you need to fill with some talent. And it sucks because that's where a lot of your tradable assets would come from, and that's where you're lacking talent the most in your system. So that's got to fix that little in-between part.
It's going to be a big year too for guys like James Tibbs and even Dakota Jordan, just because they were, guys that spent a couple seasons in college ball, and they're guys that you want to see rise quickly. Obviously, Dakota Jordan is a very raw prospect still, but if those guys, actually produce this year and can rise quickly like they should, given, age and college experience, those are guys that could completely change your outlook on trades this year too. Like James Tibbs could be, that guy that you can actually, have headline a trade rather than having to go and include Bryce, which they obviously seem kind of hesitant to do. But Tibbs is a guy playing the outfield that you may be able to afford to get rid of if you go and bring in a veteran guy to, say, plug in at left field. So he's somebody to really keep an eye on and see if he can bounce back from the little struggles he had after getting drafted last year.
Yeah.
He's a guy that just wanted the season to go like 2 or 3 more weeks, because that last week of the year in high A, he finally turned it around and he just mashed for like a week and then the season ended. And I'm like, this guy was pissed that the season just ended.
Yeah, it would have been cool to see him in like the fall league or something.
Yeah,
For sure.
definitely. Somebody asked earlier, can we name some of the lower tier players the Giants could potentially be looking to trade for? They mentioned Yandy Diaz. We've brought him up. There's actually, if you go to our previous live show, I think it was the last one, we talked a ton about different trade options. Some of the names that got thrown out there, guys like Sonny Gray, who probably wouldn't waive his no trade clause, it sounds like, but maybe if with the Giants, he's got a lot of history with guys like Bob Melvin, and he was teammates, I think, with Chapman for a year or two, possibly.
Bring Farhan back to lure him in.
Oh, yeah, that's it. But Ricky's brought up guys like Freddie Peralta, Yandy Diaz. We think those would be really good fits. People have mentioned Pablo Lopez, Luis Castillo makes a ton of sense. They're a little pricier, but the Giants could afford it. Like, that's the reality. They could afford it without even really batting an eye. And those guys could be really productive for them. So there's definitely guys out there. I've seen some people mention Stroman. His injury issues the last couple of years kind of scare me with him. He's pretty productive when he's on the field, but I
think he's a player in decline too, though, because his age, and keep in mind, I believe he only has 1 or 2 years left on his deal. It was kind of a shorter term deal. I think it was a 3-year deal with the Yankees. But his strikeout numbers were way down and his walk numbers were up a little bit. He was an all-star with Chicago the year before, but a lot of that was success in the first half, and then he kind of tanked in the second half. That all-star season, he only had 136 innings. That's definitely not what the Giants want. Especially with all these young guys. If you're bringing in a veteran guy, you definitely need like 150 plus. I mean, Cody's kind of touched on that a little bit. So
I'm telling you, Lamont and Meckler for Castillo, and I will be ecstatic. Yeah, your mic's off, Cody.
Thanks. I don't think it would actually cost all that much, because that deal would probably be enough for Castillo. I mean, I don't know if they really want a better prospect or not, but the main thing is the Mariners are trying to get out of the money. So if you're just taking on the money,
oh no, that deal's just to make me happy, bro. That's it.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I agree. I think that would be a fit. Sandy Alcantara, that's another one people have been thrown out there. I think Bleacher Report floated out like Harrison and Matos for him.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the deal, I mean you'd probably just have to do it. And I mean, he's got like 3 more years left. You just take the risk on his. What's that?
I think it might actually be 4. He's definitely got some time on his deal.
Other player that got named that we brought up, Spencer Steer. Sorry for anybody, because apparently the Giants just aren't going to go that route, even though I've made my case as to why it makes a ton of sense for them. Sorry. Looking at Stroman, he's got 1 year, $18.3 million, with a vesting option if he throws 140 innings next season. And then Sandy, somebody just mentioned he has 3 more years. I'm just going to pull up the deal if I can find it quickly. They avoided arbitration with him. He's making 17.3 in 25, 17.3 in 26, and then they have a club option for 21. And that's his age 28. Oh, I'm sorry. That's his age 29, 30, and 31 seasons. And he is coming off Tommy John. When did he? Just so we have a timeline on that.
I think it was the end, not last season, but the end of the season before, I believe.
Okay. Because Robbie Ray had suffered it like in the first game of 2023. So he missed virtually the entirety of 2023. And then he was rehabbing and everything going into spring training and in beginning of the season this last season. So and Ray made it back, after the All-Star break. Now, as we've touched on with Ray, he'll probably look a lot better next season than he did last season. Just because he's not relearning how to throw a baseball in the offseason again. With Alcantara, if he suffered it at the end of 23, he already missed, he had his offseason or he was probably healing. He missed all of last season, and now he's going to miss, he's had this offseason. He very well, he'll probably be right around his normal recovery window, but I don't know what you can expect from him production-wise right away. That would be the question.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I agree. That is the one question there. With the Castillo move, I definitely think Schmidt would be a good piece to throw in there, just because when you look at the Mariners roster, they don't really have much in terms of third base. And obviously we know he's pretty much big league ready. He just needs a chance to actually do that. I mean, he's had a pretty good season in AAA.
If if Harrison and Matos go enter a power walking contest, Kapler will sign off on the deal and submit a burger review.
Hey, they might offer that, and Kapler might counter with, Wade Meckler and Lamont Wade Jr. So that's the plus side of that.
Kapler's like, no, trust me, I know this system.
He wants whoever has a hand tat.
Yeah. Oh man, can't get him. I always forget about Woodruff because of the injury. Yeah, he's nasty when he's healthy. So yeah, I mean, what else do we want to talk about? We can talk a little bit about the Sasaki thing. So supposedly Sasaki is some rumors went out there that Sasaki's not looking to sign until closer to January 20th. Now, I have some thoughts on what the Giants should do at that point, because for those of you that are wondering, International Signing Day for all their international free agents that they have lined up for, the day they can finally put pen to paper is January 15th. So if Sasaki is intending to wait until, and I'm going to get their thoughts on this too, but if Sasaki is intending to wait to the 20th, quite frankly, in my opinion, go through with your deals. And that means getting Gonzalez, Macaris, and Barreto. I can't remember his name, but I think that's right. Julian Barreto. And go get those three guys who I don't, depending on the ranking system, like MLB, I think had them as, Gonzalez was number one, then Sasaki posted. So they have them at, I think, 20 and then 24 for Macaris, and then Barreto was unranked. And then I think Baseball America had Gonzalez number 2, and then the other two guys were like 30 and 31. And I think they actually had Barreto above Macaris in that one. But you got three guys that are big upside prospects that, if they hit, you can really, that's a great infusion of talent in one signing class. It would probably be the best signing class on paper in the major leagues this season. And you could make a very strong case that it might be the best international class ever for the Giants. And then whatever money you have left, if it's $500,000, $750,000, $1 million, I don't really know what the Giants would be down to at that point. You can offer the rest to Sasaki. And if he wants to come, great. That's awesome. He'll make plenty of money in endorsements. It seems that he doesn't care as much about the money as far as a signing bonus. Otherwise, all the teams that have $7 million bonuses versus $5 million would probably be feeling pretty good. But to me, you just can't risk losing these guys chasing a pipe dream. Like if he comes, awesome. But if he doesn't, you've got to be, even if he doesn't come, you should be feeling amazing about the class you're pulling in.
Yeah, I think the three of us are all on the same page. I can't speak on behalf of Ricky, but I hope he feels the same. You sign those guys on the 15th as soon as the clock strikes midnight. Like you need the talent in your system, and as you pointed out, it's going to be one of the best, international classes you've gotten probably ever, if not in a long, long time. So yeah, you get those three pen to paper immediately. And as you pointed out, and I think, it hasn't really been talked about much regarding Sasaki and the Giants connection. San Francisco has a huge, Asian market, Japanese market. Like you can go and get Sasaki. He will get endorsements. He will be the face of the Asian community in the Bay Area. Like him getting money is going to be no problem, especially in Northern California, the Bay Area. Like he will have no issue getting the bag. So yeah, like I agree with that wholeheartedly. Whatever you have left over, throw that at him as your, as your signing bonus. Let him, come here to be one of the faces of the franchise. Then he's going to have the fan base by his side. He's going to have the endorsements just begging for him. It's going to be a no-brainer there. But yeah, you definitely do not risk missing out on any of those three just to put all your eggs in the Sasaki basket.
I'm at the very least going after Joshua Gonzalez and making sure that deal gets done before anything else. I can live with, messing around with the other two a little bit, but you got to lock in Gonzalez. I mean, these kids have been completely committed to the Giants for months and months now. And
years.
Yeah, or even years. I mean, ultimately you gotta really commit to these guys. They've shown that they really want to be here and have been repping the Giants hard, even though the deal hasn't become official yet. And to me, it really comes down to you cannot afford to let these guys slip away. Sasaki to make you wait 5 days only for him to choose one of your division rivals, and then you not only lose out on a big stud pitcher, but you also lose out on 3 top international prospects. Like that would hurt 100 times more than losing Burns to the D-backs, losing Snell to the Dodgers. Obviously, it wouldn't hurt you right now as much, but it's going to hurt you in the long run. And I just don't think the Giants are in a position to make that kind of risk. If Sasaki really wants to be in San Francisco, which, not to be negative, but I don't understand why he would choose the Giants over the Dodgers and Padres, especially the Padres. But ultimately, make him really prove that he wants to be here desperately and make him sign earlier than 5 days out, because it's just not right. It puts you in a totally lose-lose position where, you have no idea what's going to happen with him waiting till the last minute to sign.
Oh, dude,
so I'm just not on board with that. And like Cody's mentioned on previous lives, it's just bad business for the future of pulling in international guys from the Dominican, Venezuela, Cuba, Puerto Rico. So
it would feel like a literal punch to the gut.
Yeah. They have a pretty strong rep now around the Caribbean, we'll say. Ever since, and I've brought it up, and sorry if all the people that hate Bobby Evans, but ever since, Bobby Evans kind of put Figueroa and, I can't think of the other guy's name, and I feel bad now. But the two guys that kind of run the international, like the Caribbean international scouting and all that, like the Giants have done a way better job pulling people in over the last 6 years. And I mean, I did a video on it last year on the signing classes they've had. It's actually been pretty impressive. And do you want to have the potential to really damage your rep by pulling contracts out from under these kids at the 11th hour? Like they probably would be fine at the end of the day. They would probably be okay, but it is a risk. And for a team that has struggled with acquiring talent, is it a risk that's worth taking. Because if he doesn't come, then you're in a bad spot with that. So.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I would love him. I would love to get Roki, but you can't put all your eggs in one basket. Point of the moral of the story.
Yeah. And this one better trade for some international pool money. Yeah, I'm all for it. If you can work a little more wiggle room, you can only trade for, I think, up to 50% of your pool. So the Giants right now have 5.1, so they could, in theory, acquire like 2.5. Yeah. I mean, here's a creative trade idea. If the Johnsons weren't going to be cheap about it, is what if you traded Yaz and you told a team like, hey, we're going to eat his entire contract other than whatever the minimum is, but we want $2.5 million of your international pool money.
Honestly, I kind of like
I'd do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially if it meant you could afford Sasaki and the other guys. Like, hell yeah, I would do that in a heartbeat.
For sure.
But, I don't know if a team would actually do that like that. They might view that money as more valuable. So
it's wishful thinking, though.
Yeah. George, I think I heard about that. I don't remember the kid's name. I do know in 2026 they are they have a verbal agreement with they have a verbal agreement with Luis Hernandez, who's a middle infielder from Venezuela, who's actually kind of talked about as super advanced. He's 15 years old right now, and he's been playing in like Venezuelan professional leagues and stuff down there in very high level competition.
Crazy.
Yeah. So that is a guy that, if you've listened to us, and I know you do a lot, but for those of you that listened to us in the past, like that's one of the guys that there is some concern if you do sign another qualifying offer guy, could it damage your ability to get him? So, which probably doesn't, but something to think about.
I just want to point this out. I like this. Thank you, Gran. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Ricky, did you hear my suggestion?
Yeah, we're trading Yaz to who?
No, I said if you could trade Yaz and say we'll eat his entire contract, all we want in return is your $2.5 million in international money. We'll pay the deal. Just give us the money back.
Absolutely, because the thing is like that's extremely valuable to teams, more than obviously just normal money, to throw at whoever, because that helps you get super cost controlled talent and like high level talent that you can develop and keep in your system for years. And yeah, I mean, and the other thing too is each team is only allotted a certain amount per year before it resets. So yeah. Absolutely. That's no question.
All for it.
What's the deal with Ryan Reckley's development? So yeah, he struggled mightily his first 2 pro seasons. He did like, this is the sad thing, is I actually have to go back to 2023 to find where he was ranked for the Giants on their system. But he struggled to the tune of a sub-Mendoza line batting average in the Dominican League for 2022 and 2023. Actually, I think he was in the Complex League in 23. Last season, though, he did show some nice improvements. He hit 283 in Complex League with a 940 OPS. Showed some nice pop there. Actually hit the ball pretty well. And then he got called up kind of end of the year to San Jose, played about 20 games, and he struggled in San Jose. But he did kind of flash a little bit of the tools while he was there, had 5 extra base hits, and we'll see. I don't have huge hopes there, but clearly the tools are there. He's 19. I think he turns he just turned 20 back in September. He turned 20. So he's going to be in his age 20 season. He's still very young. He'll be in San Jose to start the year next year. we'll see how he does. You know, I don't have high expectations there, but he is a guy that if he puts it together, he's still so young that he could kind of shoot back up on the rankings again down the road.
Another thing too with him, kind of similar to Walker Martin, is he had a ton of errors as a shortstop, and they actually ended up moving him to second base. And as you can imagine, moving over there and having a lot more time to make the throw, his errors went down significantly, while his obviously hitting improved significantly. But ultimately, he's another guy, high ceiling player, and he's a guy that desperately needs to have a big year this year, because 20 years old, it's not like some of these other guys where they're kids coming out of the Dominican League and they're 16 years old, and you have a few years to kind of develop them at the complex level. So he's definitely a guy that really needs to have a big year, given how much money they paid him.
Yeah. Well, the Giants have these international players for 6 years. Are you okay? So, question for 49er media: are you saying will they just be in the Giants system, or are you referring to like Sasaki would sign a 6-year rookie deal if they were to sign him? So I just want to make sure like which one you're referring to. I'm assuming you just mean, do you think they would be in their system for 6 years in some capacity with the organization? And I mean, the answer is probably some of them. I mean, I think the goal should be to acquire as much high-end talent as you can, identify which are the ones that you want to keep long-term, and then hopefully they all produce in your system, but you want to try and identify the ones you want to keep and you won't move. And some of them you may trade if you're trying to get a star. I mean, like Gonzalez, like I'm going to use him as an example. Like, let's say they'd already signed him. He was doing really well. He was shooting up prospect rankings. I mean, if I could get Kyle Tucker with if I could get Kyle Tucker with an extension, like I probably would do that deal, as much as I love, Gonzalez and his potential. But so we'll see. It's hard. I can't predict it because the goal should just be have as much talent as you can, so you have options with those players. So,
yeah. Yeah, ultimately, one of these guys can be the next Acuna. You never know. So it's like you kind of just got to keep, taking flyers on these guys, and eventually you're going to hit the lottery on one of these guys, and they end up being a superstar. Especially when you keep going the shortstop route, you're eventually going to hit on somebody big.
Yeah.
I can't see Quinn McDaniel without thinking of what I said during the Zacconi interview. For anybody that hasn't seen it, go check it out if you want to hear that comment. Yeah, Quinn McDaniel, he's got huge power for a guy his size. I'll say that. And tons of speed too. Lots of very toolsy. I know Ricky and I have had this talk back and forth for like the last year between McDaniel and Diego Velasquez, who are like both right around the same level. Like as far as they were both in high A for a while. Velasquez got a promotion up to double A for last month and change of the season, but they're both like Diego is probably a little more polished and McDaniel is a bit more toolsy and probably has more upside, but more swing and miss and things like that. So Giants just could really use exciting players in general. I mean, explosive players, exciting, whatever we want to look at it.
All the above.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cody compared Quinn McDaniel to Altuve, so there's that. To be fair, if you guys look up Quinn McDaniel, if you look at his picture, he does look like a child. And when you see pictures of him, it's kind of like if you look at like Brock Purdy on TV, you're like, man, he looks like a little midget out there compared to everybody else.
I think I just saw him next to Bryce a few times.
Great. Now McDaniel's never going to join us, guys.
He's never coming on the show.
I'm a huge fan of McDaniel personally. I think he's exciting, and he's one of those guys that could be, one of your under the radar prospects that kind of comes out of nowhere and ends up being a solid little big leaguer.
Little big leaguer. I mean, come on,
I wasn't
man.
going there.
Come on, man.
It's the way he wears his pants and his socks. I swear.
It's not
and
like
he's kind of yoked for,
Yeah.
a smaller guy.
Okay. I mean, I went a bit extreme saying Altuve because I mean Altuve is like 5'6", and I mean pop me kettle, I'm 5'6", so I can't really like judge there. But like, I thought he was maybe like 5'8", honestly. Like I did not think he was that tall. He's 5'10", but it's the socks. I think Ricky's right. It's how he wears his socks.
He's
But
5'10".
man, yeah, he's 5'10" at least. Maybe that was in baseball spikes when they measured him, but yeah, he's 5'10".
Definitely has a baby face too.
Yeah.
It'd be cool. Him and Jeremiah Jenkins were teammates at Maine, so that would be fun if we could eventually maybe, get both those guys on. That would be fun.
Yeah. He's got some huge power though. He hit some tanks. If for anybody that hasn't seen him, I mean, you can find some of them that I posted their highlights in a lot of the minor league updates last season. You could probably find some good Quinn McDaniel stuff in there, but I couldn't tell you which videos they're on, but he had quite a few different highlights. He hit some bombs for a guy that's not huge. So it was pretty fun to watch. Yeah. Slusser, and we're going to try and end this before 2 hours. We're kind of running. But let's see. A lot of people asking what's next after Adames. I mean, yeah, we're all kind of asking the same thing. I mean, we've been wanting to see some moves soon. I think we all kind of thought Burns would be the one, but that obviously didn't happen. If you guys want to see the life get sucked out of a live show, go back to our last one. I think it's like an hour and 50 minutes in when the Burns news dropped.
Yeah, whoever asked that last question and had Dan pull that up, it's all your fault because we were literally just about to end the show. And then Dan asked that question, looks down at his phone, and then just sucks the life out of everybody.
Yeah. Dude, we were vibing too. The energy was great, and we just got punched in the gut.
I didn't sleep for 4 days after that.
I still haven't slept,
Oh my gosh.
Dude, that was so bad. I mean, and then we because if we had ended the live, it would have been like, well, that sucks, and we would have just gone to bed. Deal with this tomorrow. But man, we were on the live still, and that happened. That was just crazy. I haven't slept since last year. That's hilarious. Yeah, Mike, we kind of touched on a little bit of the stuff. Castillo, we could see being an option. Some other guys, I have no clue, man. I don't know where the direction of this club is right now. I mean, I think we will get some clarity as we get closer to the season, but right now it just feels like there's a lot of different directions they could still go.
Yeah. I can't see Kim, honestly. There was a chance I did, and I thought there would be, but I can't see it.
I think once they got Adames, and then it seemed like they might have been a little bit skeptical of his medical records. We don't really know that for sure, but there were some rumors floated out there, not from any giant sources per se, but I don't know. I see Ha-Seong Kim going to a team like the Mariners or the Angels, maybe even a Pirates or something, because somebody's going to end up getting him probably on a shorter prove it deal just because of the injury. But
Braves,
I don't see the giant. Yeah, the Braves would be a great fit for him. Just plug him in like lower in that lineup, and he'd probably have a really nice season.
They could hit him 9th or 8th. They would just not care what he gave them offensively. They were like, yeah, get on base a little bit and steal bags. That's all we need from you.
Oh yeah,
and then play defense. I mean, that'd be.
That's what I told you guys even before it became kind of more public. I was like, I heard from my half-ass source that that's what the issue was. It was the medical records. They saw something they didn't like, and they said, "Nah, cool."
Yeah, which I'm not surprised at with the shoulder injury and your throwing arm, and so, all right. Well, I think that's a good way to stop it. Appreciate everybody that's joined in tonight. We'll hopefully, if something happens tomorrow, we'll drop some more, or we'll go live again. Yeah, I think that's exactly where we end it. We hate the Dodgers. Exactly.
Yeah.
I almost sent out a New Year's tweet and was going to be like, hey, Happy New Year to everyone. Hope everyone has a great New Year's, except for Dodger fans. go F yourself.
Exactly.
But I was like,
We have a
"Yeah,
couple on here every now and then too.
Yeah. I'm like, it'll piss off some people though. But yeah, for anybody that joined in, we appreciate all the support from you guys. If you do enjoy the content, please do like the videos, subscribe to the channels. We have like 205 people in here right now. I don't know how many of you guys are on X, but if you're on X, if you can hop on over to YouTube and drop a sub there, that'd be much appreciated. Even if you don't, though, we still appreciate you guys coming and hanging out. It's a lot of fun. We would love to have more stuff to talk about with the Giants, but it seems like we've just been stuck in the rumor mill for a month, and hopefully that changes soon. But we are up to 1,330 subscribers, so it's going up pretty fast. The goal is to hit 1,750 by the time the season starts, by opening day. That is the goal. So please do, drop a subscription there.
But I want to just step in really quick. Guys, I'm sorry, but Buster Posey did make a statement, and he said that he is not signing any free agents unless Cody gets to 1,500 subs. So if you want to see Posey make a sign, you got to get this guy to 1,500. All right. Yeah. I don't make the rules. Buster Posey says it. Okay.
You heard it, everyone.
And do you still want to do another giveaway at 1,500?
Of course.
Yeah. So we are going to do a giveaway
one
at 1,500 again. So
damn it.
Hence, I may have another Bailey item for all you Bailey lovers that are watching the show right now.
Yeah. You definitely cross out the 14 and put in the last name and throw Bart on there. Damn.
Yeah, I could throw this in if anyone wants it. Right, ready? It may or may not be Joey Bart.
Yeah. We got another cool item that's going to come out. And that'll be at 1,500. We'll probably go at like 1,500, then we'll do it at 2,000 or something. I don't know. Maybe we'll do 1,750 if they get us there before the season. That would be cool.
Posey said he's signing Sasaki if you get Cody to 2K.
By January 20th, too. It's got to be by the 20th when he's going to
17 days. You got 17 days. Guys. Get it done. Rapido.
That's awesome. That'd be hilarious.
Hey, there's another sub.
Shouts out Harris.
Yeah, shout out, man. So, all right, I think that's a good one to end it on. Like I said, appreciate all you guys. Go Giants. We'll catch you guys next Friday for sure. If we get anything else sooner, we'll jump on a live. If we do get a Giants signing or acquisition or whatever, we'll hop on a live then. Otherwise, it will be next Friday. And I'm sure I'll put out a couple, videos in the next week between now and then. So appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you next time.